Welcome to the video. We're going to be doing a 200 amp panel swap today. I'm going to go over some pointers for you and some highlights. There's a few different things that I'm doing on this one because of what we're going to be doing in the future here at this residence. We're going to be adding solar and doing some renewable energy. So we're going to actually put a box above our panel for, we have some extra wires from the old wall heaters that haven't been demoed yet, but if I can get this out of the new panel and we're not splicing all these neutrals and grounds if they're going to be short or any of the circuits. I hate wire nuts in panels. Sometimes it's inevitable, I get it, especially when you're doing a panel upgrade and they give you a space up here where you can hide some wire nuts and you can bundle them up and make it look halfway neat. That's great and all, but if this is another option, I'm going to put a J box above it. That's what's going to allow this to be a really clean install. And it's also going to allow us to get out of the wall since we have finished walls here and we're going to have surface mount equipment later. We're going to need a way to get out of the wall into the panel that's flush mount out to the surface mount equipment on the wall, which is going to be the combiner box for the PV arrays on the roof and the feeder circuit going to that. So we're going to give you updates along the way, but right now what we're doing is we're just getting set up. The utility was a little late in our jurisdiction. We got to wait for them to come and pop a lock, and of course things happen. They didn't get here in time, so we were just kind of getting set up and milling around. Some locales you can actually pull the meter yourself, but always double check with your utility. They're always going to be the people that can answer that question for you, because you can get in a lot of trouble, you can get fines, things of that nature. Unless you're trained, don't go popping a trained professional working for the utility or electrician. It's best not to start messing with the unfused power that's coming off the street or the pole. So, a couple things that I like to do when I'm doing a panel swap is, one, electricians are notorious for making workbenches out of anything. A random chair, another trades cart, gang box, whatever. So I just bring a folding table. It allows me to set up relatively quickly and gives me a little bit of space to work with things. Like I'm going to be punching out our 12 by 12 box. We'll get over there in a second. But some of the necessities, like obviously power's still on in the house. We haven't disconnected yet. PUD just drove away, popping the lock for us. One, make sure if you're going to be going with batteries, make sure your batteries are charged up. Make sure you got a couple light sources. I don't like to rely on one light source. I got this, I got my headlamp, I got another small battery powered light, and we actually have a little portable generator if things get really bad and we need to do something. Typically it doesn't, but it's always good to be prepared. The other thing I'll always recommend is clipboard with a notepad. So if you're taking circuits off, breakers, and a lot of times, like this is a fairly clean panel. This really is. A lot of times you're going to have weird things, 2 wires on a breaker, things of that nature, weird splices. This allows you to write that stuff down as you're taking it apart, so you can then put the system back together and you can just kind of keep running notes when you're making your panel schedule. As you're terminating, I'm going to go through here, I'm going to start flagging wires as I'm taking them off, letting me know what they are. Kitchen circuit, general lights, things of that nature. I'll just put a little white tag on it, right on it with a Sharpie. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. And when I go to start terminating the new panel, I just start, as I land wires, I just write them down and we got our panel schedule. It's pretty simple. What we have here today is we're going Leviton, came out with load centers. They've invested a lot in the market. Leviton's been around for a really long time. Everybody should be familiar with their products. You probably have their products in your home. Typically they're plugs and switches and things of that nature, but a couple years back they made a bid to get into the load center and panel board market, which I believe is a good thing. They're a little bit cleaner looking, especially for a finished wall like this. Let's go ahead and open this guy up. They got a couple little extra things, like they come with a, you know, a paint shield or a mud shield if you're doing new construction, and it's actually already got a circuit, so you can fill in your circuits, and then when you go to leave, you just turn it around, you put it inside the panel, and as construction progresses, it keeps a lot of the debris out of the inside of the panel box. But I always encourage people, if you're in new construction, wipe that thing out, clean it with the vacuum before you're energizing and turning the home on. This I always did, but I usually would just cut it out of the box with a razor knife, so it helps a little bit. It's already done for us. So the inside of the Leviton, they made a couple changes that I like. They make it ease of access. First of all, they're 200 amp main breakers. The bussing inside here is copper bussing rated for 225 amps, which with smaller PV systems you can just backfeed a breaker on here and you're still compliant. You can get up to 70 amp backfeed, and that allows you to comply with the 120% rule. We can get into that later, but as you can see, the panel itself, the enclosure is white. I also set up a garbage can, and we have a vacuum because we're going to be cutting some sheetrock. So those are also things you like to prepare for, along with clipboard, temporary lighting, all your tools, workbench. That's always helpful to have, because electricians are notorious for not cleaning up after themselves, which I've been in the trade for about 27 years. It's true. Most of us don't. But if we think about just having, we can have a full garbage can, we can have the pop-up garbage cans, we can have a 5-gallon bucket. That's what I've always encouraged people to do, is if you have the trash receptacle there, you're more likely to use it. So if you just set it up, it's there, and you clean as you go. Because then at the end of the day, you want to get out of here, your mess is already 90% cleaned up. And yeah, so inside the load centers that Leviton has came out with, what is kind of nice is, one, the line and neutral you don't have to terminate your hot conductors to your breakers. The breakers are actually wire free. They clip on to the bussing and the tabs on the side, so you can actually have neutrals, everything terminated, especially in like new construction. You can have everything, all your terminations done, and when you're coming back, you come back in later, you got your circuit breakers. They got tabs, just like they're clipping onto the bus like it's normal, with more the typical existing panels that are out there. When you come back, you're just clipping it on. Actually, make sure it's odd working from this angle. Clip it in, and you can turn your breakers on. You don't have to now terminate this. It's already done. Again, they've color coded it similar to all receptacles. Your brass colored screws are your hot conductors, your silver colored screws are your neutrals, and you just need to make sure the neutral is paired up with the hot. On the Leviton, the neutral is on top of the hot conductor. But again, open things up, familiarize yourself with it, so those little mistakes and troubleshooting errors won't come up to haunt you later. So breakers are pretty easy to clip in and out. So that's another advantage of them. I'm always leery when new things hit the market, but this has been out for a couple years. We'll see. The company itself has been around for well over 100 years, so they've invested a lot in their panel board line. So, you know, time will tell, but I think it's a good investment. Like I said, there's some upgrades having the bussing rated for 225. It doesn't matter if you have anything over the 150 amp boards. I believe are all 225 ampacity bus bars. So the other thing that I do like about this is earlier, I think it was last month, August 2023, they came out with their Gen 2 smart breakers. Now there's not a lot of options on the market right now for smart panels and smart home integration. There is, of course, Leviton has their smart switches and devices like that, but when it comes to smart panels that are integrated with your PV systems, your battery storage, your consumption per circuit, there aren't a lot of options out there. Leviton's one of them. The main one on the market right now is Span. The Span panels, they integrate, they're a little bit deeper, they're 6 inches deep because they have a relay board behind the busing, and that's how they get away with when it comes to load shedding. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too much, but that's how they enable, if the power goes out and you have an emergency backup or your standby system, PV on the roof, battery storage, systems of that nature, it will automatically shut down your non-essential loads, and it keeps your essential loads on. Your critical loads, keeps your lights on, your modem, your microwave, a couple kitchen circuits, your refrigerators, things of that nature. You're not running the majority of your home. You're just running your essential loads that you want to keep on and keep going through the outage. Now with Leviton, they did not have that load shedding ability, but their Gen 2 breakers, now their technology is similar to Span. How they got around the listings, because you're not supposed to be able to remotely operate breakers and re-energize them if you're not present in person, is they've actually built the relay into the breaker. So it's a way around it. Now you can accomplish load shedding, and it works with the app on your phone, the homeowner. They can program what they want to do in the event that you lose power. What loads are going to stay off, what loads are going to turn off, what loads are going to stay on. So they have, it's kind of a workaround, and that was the first thing when I spoke to my Leviton rep a couple months back, and we were going over their panel board and their load center line. That was the one thing I said, well, Span's got you. They have load shedding capabilities. Now, there's many ways to load shed, but a lot of people these days, they don't want to have to think about it. They just want it to do it on its own. So that's what Span and Leviton, and I'm sure the other manufacturers are going to be coming out with more solutions in the near future. So we got a little bit of a late start, so we're going to dive right into it. We'll give you some updates along the way, but yeah, it's time to kill power and get moving forward. So tune back. Like I said, we'll give you updates as we're going along for all the, I guess, bullet points, if you will. So, all right, stick around. All right, so we're getting ready to punch our box out that's going above our panel. I'm just going to show you a couple quick things. This can apply to any panels that aren't residential. You're doing commercial, industrial, you're punching out an MCC, you're punching out any kind of enclosure. I don't like getting I hate having knockouts already in something because it limits you to what you can add, where you can add it. I do a lot of pipe work, and that really restricts you. And typically there's never, if you look at the end of a panel, this is made for, all these KOs are made for cable. This isn't to try and get conduit out on racks here. You're bending little offsets, nothing's lined up. So when I'm working, I guess that comes from 20 years in the heavy industrial and commercial field, but it applies to everything. Neat, clean, orderly, and it doesn't take much longer. Like I said, we're adding a pull box above our panel on this one to give us a place to splice our circuits and all the cables that are ran through the house from old heating systems and whatnot, that we're not going to try and demo them and find them all the way through and tear them out of walls and do a bunch of patch. We're just going to safe them off, leave them in. We know from point A they've been safed off in a box in the house, and they're safed off in the box out of the panel. They don't need to be in the panel. They're not being used anymore. But they're there if for any reason in the future we can utilize them later. So when you're punching, all I'm doing is getting my spacing, get a combo square. I measured off the back end, Just brought it out an inch. Everything I'm punching in here is basically 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch. The ones that are circled are all my 1/2 inch holes, so I keep track of them. And these two on the end are my 3/4. And then I'm going to put a couple spare chases up into my attic space, so in the event I want to add something in the future, there's already a chase there. We can pull it right down the wall. We're not trying to fish a Romex down and find it in the wall, anything like that. So anyways, back to this. I got equal spacing, everything's lined out. This is a center punch, spring-loaded center punch. They have the old ones where you can tap them with the hammer, but it keeps your bit from walking on you. So all I do is I got my crosshairs. Just go over all my lines. Okay, so for the purpose of the video, I'm not going to do all the rows. I'm going to cut through it. I like to leave my boxes, my panel boxes open and whatnot, because this is yet another way. I'm going to create a bunch of metal filings and pieces, so clean as you go. You know, I got a garbage behind me, I got vacuums if I honestly wanted to, you know, but that's the thing, is if you're working with a partner, that's what your partner can be doing. It can be or you just put up a barrier or a shield so your metal shavings aren't getting launched out. I personally like, stay right here. We're using a couple different hole cutter kits. This is by DeWalt. This is our old-fashioned Greenlee hole cutter kit, where you got your arbor for all the different sizes you need. This, honestly, I kind of like these. They're a little quicker. They are black because they're impact rated. They say impact rated. Please don't use them with an impact. One, it's extremely noisy. Two, it breaks the teeth off. These things last forever. I've had this kit for probably at least a year, and I do a lot of electrical rooms where you're just punching out hundreds of holes. The other must, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of holes, I like Rapid Tap. This is the paste. They make cutting oil. This works pretty good. It allows you to not get oil all over the place. It kind of stays in place. So every couple holes, you just go up there, run the teeth in it, get another cut ready to go for your holes. The best I found is Anchor Lube. That's a metalworking. It almost comes out like sunscreen. It's like a lotion consistency, so it doesn't drip, and it keeps that lotion's not quite as thick as the paste, but it won't run, drip, and that is the best, but I'm out of it right now. So anyways, I'm doing my 1/2 inch holes. A key that I have is when I'm doing this many holes, is I swap out to save my bits, because heat is the enemy of all carbide teeth and things of that nature. If you've ever thrown sparks off a hole saw or a saw blade or sawzalls especially, you start seeing the sparks, that's your teeth launching off. So paste, and every 4th hole or so, I'll just swap out my tips and let the other one cool down. So again, I'm braced, so I'm using a drill, I'm not using an impact. I get in there, I'm not pushing really hard. You let the tool do the work. You're done. You know, every hole, just get a little bit more. See where your crosshairs are. That little hole, our automatic punch, keeps my bit from walking all over the place, so my holes end up right where I want them. Again, I don't need to be at full speed. That creates a lot more heat that's needed. Nice and easy. This is how you keep your tools good for a long time. You know, I'm probably using more paste than I actually need. I like the paste because it doesn't get all over the place. It's the other reason I don't put this on full speed. You see all that stuff getting shot off the end of it? I like to work clean. I don't like going home looking like I've just been in crawling through the sewers or something like that. You know, there's no need for it. But you know, a little bit of paste. And if I have somebody breathing down my back saying I'm not getting the holes in fast enough, you're seeing it takes a fraction of the time. That's why I started my own company, because I can keep $100 set of bits good for a year versus chewing through these, going through 2 sets on one job. That's where you're losing your money. That's what it is. So that's why, you know, I don't like yellers and screamers. You know, if I want to give that bit a break, I got another one right here. Like you said, these are all well worn, but some of these have probably been around a lot longer than a year. Also doing a couple extra holes just in case. A KO seal is, you know, 20 cents, if that, 10 cents, you know, and then they're right there. You can just knock them out of the way, and you got an extra hole. You're not trying to drill. These are the little things you just think and plan ahead. But again, I come from a commercial industrial background, so that's where a lot of these little quirky things come from. And alright, so those are all our 1/2-inch holes. Swap out, do my 3/4 real quick. Again, just get a little bit of paste. Okay, so again, rag in your pocket. I also recommend having leather boots or shoes on. If you're cutting through metal and you're creating a bunch of shavings, that metal's hot and it's going to melt right into your tennis shoes. So, like I said, you keep these boxes around for the job. Quick rag, wipe that stuff out. There we go. They're lined up. The ones on the front row that I didn't center punch, they're a little bit off, but that was just me eyeballing it. But again, I already know there's a lot of people. This is going to be in the wall and nobody's ever going to see this. They're going to see the inside when you open it up. It's going to be nice, clean, good work. It's going to be easy to add to and whatnot. So, but yeah, hole cutters, take care of them. Use some paste, use oil, whatever you have. Like I said, Anchor Lube, if you want to look it up, it's like a turquoise looking, it's like, you know, skin lotion or whatever consistency, and it doesn't drip and get all over the place. Works really good with stainless and things of that nature. But don't go on high speed. Don't throw these things in an impact. You can, they're rated, but you're going to blow your teeth off within a week or two. These things last for a really long time if you take care of them. So, anyways, we'll get you on the next next little section. See you. All right, so we got our panel punched out. Got our J-box that we're mounting punched out. So we got all our prep work done. Now, we have the option here. The utility comes, they just pop the lock. We can pull the meter whenever we want, plug it back in at the end of the day, get the customers back on. Then we call for our inspection. Inspectors come, give a green sticker. Utilities will come back out and relock the meter enclosure. So now we're going ahead and moving forward. We're going to start shutting things off. So when you're doing you're taking down any big load or closing opening a big breaker, you always load shed. Just turn off all the little loads, because all those little loads can add up to a big load, and that just puts more stress on the electrical equipment, the breaker, anything. So again, these aren't leather rated gloves. I'm not in a full cowl suit like when we're doing industrial and whatnot, and we have serious arc flash potential. But you only get one set of eyes, glasses, and really good. I have a set of gloves in my bag at all times that I only use. They stay clean. I don't pull wire with them. I don't get any kind of contaminants on them, because a nice, good, clean set of leather gloves is how I was trained back in the 90s, before arc flash was really a thing. If we had a good, clean pair of gloves, would insulate us from 600 volts and below. Basically, we work 480. Times have changed. Protect yourself. Take the precautions. So right here, I've had the panel cover off. Now that I'm reaching in there, another good thing to do is you always turn away when you're closing. Same when you're coming on. So I'm just going through, shutting down everything in the house. Now there is no load in the house right now. Now we have our main. So you go in order, little loads to big loads. Again, it's just out of habit. I look away. Mainly that's when you're energizing, because typically if you have a ground fault, that's when something's going to go wrong, or you have a dead short, things of that nature. That's when things blow. But if you get in the habit and you're doing this and you've been around bad accidents, those little things, may get your arm flashed on a little bit, and believe me, it goes more than a little bit if you're dealing with industrial applications and whatnot. So this panel's dead. We're going to go outside. We're going to pop the meter real quick, because the enclosure we're doing, the meter's falling out of the siding. We got to support it a little bit more. So again, they come, they pop their little tag that's on here and pull it out. That's how they know if somebody's tampered with their equipment. About a week ago, we pounded a couple rods in the ground and fished under the sidewalk here for new grounding electrodes, because when they poured this sidewalk around the house, they enclosed and they covered up the old electrodes, the old ground rods. And so we leave these open until the inspector, when he comes to inspect the service, he's going to want to see new electrodes. If you have any metal water piping in the house, you're going to want to bond that. And there's times that you can use those as electrodes, but they have to meet specific conditions. And if you're working in something that you can't verify, that copper pipe is 10 feet in the ground or something like that, everything refers to as a bond. You're no longer using it as electrodes. Electrodes on homes typically are a concrete encased electrode, which is typically referred to as a UFER, U-F-E-R. That is either a 20-foot section of rebar, unbroken in the stem wall, in the footing, that 90's up, and we attach to it with a special clamp, and we take that into our panel. Or it's 20 feet of number 4 copper, bare. Typically on the bottom of the mesh in the footing, the bottom of the steel, you want it closer to the earth, where the moisture content's going to stay in the concrete. That's been around since the 90's. Those are becoming more prevalent. Other than that, it's typically ground rods up in our area, because we have decent soil. And these are supplementary, but we don't have any copper piping, metal water piping in the house. And we have nothing else coming in. So basically the ground rods are what we got. So here we are. So this enclosure is rocking off the wall a little bit. We're going to put, when we replace the panel on the other side, I'm going to put a 2x4 in, so this meter can then get screwed back up. It can be firm against the, so trying to hold this back and pull the meter out at the same time. So again, like most things, you got 4 jaws. This is a typical 4-jaw ring style meter. So this up top, that's unfused conductors coming from the street. Don't touch that, it's bad. You're gonna have a bad day. On the bottom side, that's our conductors going into the house, and I'm gonna be replacing those because they're not quite long enough to reach the new breaker. But you just pop that meter out. Like I said, I hold that, but we need to be very careful and we need to know what we're dealing with. That right there, while I'm working in here, if I cross and ground out anything in there, I'm gonna have a bad day. So we are going to not do that. So a lot of times this is an underground service feed. If they needed, they could come out and they could pull off their junction box or their transformer, depending on what they have in the area, pedestal. But they don't typically do that. Because typically, you can do this. If it's an overhead service mast and we have to replace the service mast, yeah, they cut it at the street, they open it up so we can replace everything and we don't have that hazard. But again, know what you're doing. Be confident, not cocky. Take the precautions you can and you'll be able to get through it. So, all right, get you on the next one. All right, so again, we're just taking everything off the breakers. We opened the meter outside. The conductors that were coming in the building to the main breaker were not going to be long enough to reach the new breaker. They were close, but I'm just going to replace them anyways. Typically, I'd be replacing that meter pack, the meter can out there too. But we have some work that we're going to be doing in the future, and at that point I'm going to replace the meter and replace it with a meter main with distribution on it, so I can get some power out to different areas on the property here, and that's going to allow us to access everything from the outside without having to really mess with this inside. So again, I'm just going through. I had my panel schedule. Again, good reason to have a notepad or two. Had the panel schedule, so I'm pulling it off and I'm just putting little flags of tape. Doesn't need to be anything special. DW, dishwasher, bath GFI, attic lights, plugs, general lighting circuits, you know, general lighting that we know is kitchen, bathroom, things like that. The neutrals obviously don't need to be labeled because they're paired up with the hot conductor. They're in a cable. It's not like we're in open raceways. The 3/4 conduit I did have running up into the attic for the furnace is labeled and they're paired up. This is out to our heat pump. This is up to the air handler. But yeah, if you're in cables, just label the one that's going on the breaker. The neutrals, I am going to identify those also, and I'm just going to have them because those are going to need to terminate on the new Leviton panel. They don't just terminate on a random neutral bar. They're actually terminating right next to the phase conductor, or the hot conductor on the new Leviton. So again, this is all the boring stuff in between, but like I said, just a little piece of tape, Sharpie, doesn't take very long, peel out 20 or 30 circuits and we can get moving on the rest of it. All right, stay tuned, next phase coming up. Okay, so getting to the point where we're taking these out. This was a type of connector they used back in the 80s, 90s, I'd imagine. I never used these things, but they would slide them up and they would crimp them down so they're tight, right? So the best way I've ever found is they're real lightweight, but you can grab them and you just pinch them and with your channel locks. And for the most part, they'll loosen up and come off. If they don't loosen up, at least your wires, your cables coming through that will be able to move up and down. So, and if you absolutely have to, it's a very lightweight aluminum. So if you can get them loose, You can also just cut them in half, cut them out of your way. But for the most part, like I said, if you just grab them with your channel locks, you can get them loose and or loose enough to where you can pop them out and they're no longer an issue. Sometimes you come up against those things, and until you find out a little way that works, they're kind of a pain, but they're actually pretty simple to get out of there. So I would advise you not using one-time crimp things. I find quality and craftsmanship and economy of motion have a tendency to make up time, and time is really the most expensive thing that we have. The difference between a 10-cent connector versus a 15-cent connector, that's not what's breaking our jobs. That's not what is keeping us from making money. You know, it's the labor. So anyways, stay tuned. All right, so we've done a little bit of work since the last one. We've got the new breaker box in. We've cut out our hole. We got our nipples in right here to attach to the 12 by 12 box. Now what I'm doing is I'm going through all the existing cables, which these are from the 90s. You can tell just by the type of Romex insulation that's on there. So with these, nothing, I go through, I mark them all at the same distance. I checked, I have slack going up. We're in the garage right here, so there's room going up. So with these, back up just here. Just take my razor knife. I'm barely putting any pressure. You're just basically doing a score, and you're having to pry it apart. So too often people put a brand new razor blade in and they push too hard, and they actually get inside and damage the interior, the insulation on the conductors. New Romex these days is extremely easy to strip. You just have to score it, and that's what I'm doing here again on my line. I'm barely pushing on it. Wrap it around so that line comes up. When I get up to that line, pull it down. I have a nice clean break on the exterior, the sheath of it. Clean up your paper. Again, you got your garbage can right here. You're just dropping everything right into the garbage can. This is a newer Romex that was ran. This isn't that old. So another way of stripping Romex, the newer stuff these days. It's got a pair of strippers. I'm not putting any pressure. I'm in a sense just rolling it. You can tell them. And actually, that one I gotta put a little bit more pressure on. And then they just typically pull off. Nope, got my label down here. So, that's that. Got a couple more to do. Got my old SE cable here for the range, the old 3 conductor. So I got a couple left. Again, this is a 10-3 for the dryer. Same thing, just real light pressure. I'm not actually even cutting through the exterior sheath. I get down here near the end, and then I can even turn my blade around and pull out. So I know I'm not hitting those conductors on the inside. I get up to my line, just a little bit shy. Basically just kind of running the knife around. And as you're pulling, comes off. I know I'm not getting through because all the paper's still intact. That's the thing. Sometimes, you know, when I was coming in, people they'd stuff all their Romex into their boxes first, and then they'd reach in with their knife and they'd score them on the front and the back. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone in to do panel or receptacle and switched boxes and changing the devices out, and you go to move the conductors around and you see the copper showing right here. So just use caution. You know, it doesn't take, like I said, the new Romex is real easy to strip. They've made it that way because call them rope monsters would get in there with their knives and just damage the crap out of things. And electricity, for the most part, isn't going to cause a lot of problems, but the more exposed, you know, those little nicks in the insulation, then you go in, you change your plug. Well, now that nick got moved around in the box and you got the bare grounds in there, now you actually do have a problem. You know, and it wasn't anything that you did change in the plug or the switch, it was the installation, you know, 30 years ago. You know, just poor practice. That's everything I'm trying to do with this stuff is just good practice. There's more than one way to do things, and the way I see it, there's only a few ways to do it right and nice and clean. It doesn't take much longer, you know. I think the longest part about this stuff is making these videos. Still getting used to that. Luckily, I have the support of my amazing camera woman. She will not show her face, and that's okay. But light pressure coming down, especially when you're right in the middle, you know you're right above that ground. Come up here. No real pressure. And then when I'm doing it, I'm pulling down. It's just getting that score in the insulation. It's just like scoring metal and then bending it back and forth a couple times. Similar to that. So, anyways, we're about to organize all these cables, get them ready to bring into our 12x12. So that's why you always bring a couple extra. You like 2 screw connectors when you're fishing in walls and doing things like that. These are listed to have 2 like-size cables. That's my whole thing about that is you can put 2 14-2s, 2 12-2s. If you're using a round cable, don't put a round cable, a 14-3 and a 14-2 in it. I do not believe they're rated for that. You check the listings, it's 2 like-size cables. And when you're doing the bigger stuff, just 1 10-3. But when you have like 2 12-2s, you can put them in there, especially where we have 2 kitchen circuits. Put them under one if you want. But I said, again, like-size cables. 2 flat 12-2s. We're not mixing a round and a flat. That usually applies to most things, your cable stackers, things of that nature. If they're rated for 2 conductors, typically it's 2 of the same style and size. 2 14-2s, 2 12-2s, etc. So, again, we're back at that slow point where it gets kind of boring. So, we will hang around for the next one. We're getting close. Alright, so wrapping up the panel here. We still got the cover off so you can see what's going on. Did have a little bit of a mishap. This piece of sheetrock was supposed to stay in place, but this actually gives you a good behind the scenes. It's an easy patch, but it shows you what we actually did in the wall. So it's a little bit different setup. None of the wires in here were going to reach the new locations, so that's why I opted to put this box up here. And there's another reason for that too, is we're actually putting solar on the house, and we're going to be mounting a combiner box for all our PV array circuits that are coming down. It's going to be surface mount. So it's surface mount, and we're going to backfeed a breaker in the panel here. So we're going to need to be able to get in the panel. And when you have surface mount equipment and you have a flush mount panel, you need a way to get into it. So hence why this box is sticking 2 inches out. We're going to be backfeeding a 50 amp circuit into the panel for the PV array, and we can update that, and we can get up to 1.25 inches easily. Could get punched in the side here if we wanted to increase the solar on the house and or add anything else. So what we've done here is, one, all these circuits were short. I think there was one that was going to make it, and there was the one that was getting fed from underneath that actually fit and landed on a breaker. So this allowed us the opportunity. I'm not a big fan of doing all our splices here. You can do it. It's allowed in areas. It's just not a good practice in my opinion. So what we have up here is we have a nice clean box that we can pull our circuits out of. You know, these were some future wires. This was an old heaters that were in the wall that are no longer being utilized. We put a heat pump system in and a furnace. So these are circuits that are out there in the house, safed off. We haven't demoed all the walls yet to get access to take the wires out. So we cap them off in here, throw a label on them. So if for some reason we were wanting to use them in the future, but they are capped off. Other than that, we do have label tags, just some white tape with some Sharpie on them, identifying the conductors, and they're grouped. Like this is obviously tie wrapped, which there's actually flush cuts, very nice tool when you're doing tie wraps. Cuts it off nice and flush so you don't scratch yourself. But like I said, so this is the dryer circuit. You can pull that out. What is a little different up here, and it's something that I do a lot in commercial and industrial, is I also keep, if you notice how clean the panel is, there's a lot less conductors in here than it needs to be. Down here we have our grounding electrodes. We have the new solid number 6 that we ran to the new ground rods. We had the existing stranded copper that went out to the old ground rods, but we can't prove them. And what I did is I took a number 6 copper up and I just mounted a ground bar in the back of the panel, or in the back of the box up here. That allows me to keep all the grounds terminated up here. It's a full-size ground, so there's no shortage of grounding, and it just cleans up the panel. There's less in here. So if you notice too, all the Romex was solid, of course. And I just ran THHN, grouped it together, black, red, white on the multi-wire branch circuits, and black and white for the standard ones, just matching the colors of the cables that they're mating up with in the box. All I do is, it doesn't take that much. Everybody, you know, most residential you don't have, unless you're getting into high-end custom residential, are you going to be running conduits and pulling actual THHN wire. Unless you're in Chicago. I know you guys got to pipe everything out there, so I imagine you pull a lot of stranded. But yeah, so I just sit here, group them up, run them to the top. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe let me know what you think. Does it look good? It didn't really take us any longer than a normal service change. It allows us future adaptability to add on solar and renewables, and to, if they wanted to add an EV charger or anything, you can just pop a cable out of here. We utilized PVC TAs with a coupling and a box adapter up here, and then this one is just an offset nipple because we wanted to squeeze it in with a 12-inch box and a 14.5-inch panel. So, but as you can see, these are all lightly loaded. You know, these are under 24 inches, so you're in the chase nipple category, so we're not worried about the ampacity duration. And we actually have a completely empty future conduit for anything we want to do. What I would like to, a couple things I'd like to draw attention to is, first, I should be probably wearing gloves and glasses. So I do admit that. I'm a trained professional. Doesn't excuse the fact that I should be wearing gloves and glasses. When I tie wrap in here, if you notice, these are loose. I'm not cinching these down super tight. There's still room for the cables to, in a sense, breathe. So all these conductors, anything that's carrying ampacity through it, is creating heat. So that's where you might be in there. You might have came across an inspector that says that. You know, you got to let the cables breathe. You need spacing in between. That's why we're not supposed to run multiple cables through one hole in a wall, or, you know, or in a stud and whatnot, and maintain that over 24 inches without some separation. So I group it loose, but like I said, these are by no means tight. They're not cinched down as tight as I can make it. When you're in control cabinets and stuff like that, if you're training your wires to come in, you know, they're gonna lay into the back. You don't have to cinch everything down tight. There are applications where you may need to. So, but for the most part, I still got to get a couple KO seals up in the top of the box, put the cover on, probably give it one last coat of the spray paint. We just rattle canned it white so it matches, so it's not the typical gray. Trying to think if there's anything else. I don't know. I think Leviton came out with a heck of a panel, and you know, it makes it really easy in the future. If you want to come in, one of these breakers goes bad, it's as simple as shutting it off, pulling it out, slapping the new one in. You know, it doesn't take much. Actually, let's go ahead right here. This is a general circuit for garage. Take my new breaker. They got hooks on the end. Hook them in. Push it in flush. Re-energize. This makes it really easy if you want to add arc fault, GFI protection, whole circuit protection. In here we just took the two general purpose circuits here currently. You can see the little arc fault. It's similar to every other GFI that has a trip light on it. If that's red, it's bad. So, but actually Leviton does go beyond that. It will flash certain codes where it's telling it it's because these are series parallel arc fault breakers. It will tell you if it's series or parallel fault, etc., etc. We'll take care of that on another video. But here we are, clean. We didn't update the meter. We got the meter base attached back to the house. It was a little loose, so we put some bracing behind the box here. Got the meter base firmly attached to the house. So I don't know. I think that's pretty much the basics. Oh, one other point: surge protection, whole panel surge protection. We can get that in there. Green lights means it's operating, and you can actually utilize. It's a 2-pole 20. You can utilize the for circuit protection on top of your surge protection for your home. So that's a new thing. It's a nice add, relatively cheap, ready to go. The cover we got going on, we've opted for the clear one because the panel does look so good. Typically you don't have a panel cover that you can see through, but that nice white finish is a nice touch, especially on finished walls. You know, I think they came out with a hell of a product. Yeah, so I'm going to continue to use them. Let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you like the content. We're going to be coming out with more. Like I said, me and my wife, we've invested in ourselves. We've started up our own contracting business, and we want to do good quality work for people that appreciate that. We're not trying to trash in a bunch of work out there like some contractors are. Hey, but if you like the content, I also will be adding more simple things that I said basically all homeowners should be able to know. So if you like it, hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.